Hi everyone, I'm Jack Crawford, and it's time to review Damaged in Transit by Wyatt Yeong, Diego Garcia, and Greg Heffernan. I had no expectations going into this game. Since I started this channel, I've been playing a lot of obscure games by designers I'd never heard of, and this is the first time it's really paid off. This game is an interesting mix of fast-paced action and logic puzzles. The basic setup is you control these two drones using these directional arrows on the ground. The drones move automatically, so the only thing you have to do is input up, down, left, and right. It's this nice, clean control scheme that never changes. Meanwhile, the mechanics build quite a bit over the course of the game, but I like how they remain focused on the core idea. This game is all about paying attention to multiple things at the same time. Each new mechanic leads to situations that stretch your brain in new, interesting ways. At first, you just have to pay attention to two robots at the same time, but eventually you have to pay attention to multiple effects of your inputs. For instance, these spikes toggle up and down every time you press a direction to change the arrows. Eventually, you have to pay attention to so many different things and switch back and forth between them, and your brain is just going in so many different directions at once. By the end of the game, you have this sense that this core idea of attention splitting has been taken in so many different directions, it's been explored so thoroughly. There's a beauty to that you don't see in many games. It seems like most designers just add mechanics that seem cool without much regard for how they're going to fit into the game as a whole. There's plenty more I appreciate about the design. I get the sense that a lot of invisible design work went into making sure that there are lots of different viable solutions for each level, making sure things line up properly, especially for the later levels. There are jokes in the level design, which I won't try to explain because they won't make sense if you haven't played the game up until that point, but I really appreciate when a designer can create humor purely through game mechanics. It's something that adds a lot of personality to a game, I think. Each individual level strikes a different balance between action and puzzle. The game plays on this full spectrum where sometimes there's no real options for how to get through a level, there's one obvious path, and on the other end of the spectrum, sometimes you can just sit in the middle of a level, stop, and think about what to do next. Then there are the boss levels, which are much longer and more complex. They test your ability to plan out a good route to make it easy for yourself, and your ability to execute a long sequence of actions. This level variety is good for the flow and the pacing of the game. The difficult levels can be pretty brutal and mentally exhausting sometimes. It's nice to be able to just chill out and think about a puzzle for a minute. But it's also good because it allows each level to remain focused on what makes it special. They didn't feel the need to add in pointless challenges like a bunch of spikes on the puzzle levels, for instance, so the unique appeal of each level really shines through. Not every level is a perfect crystallized idea, which is probably my biggest criticism for the game. Sometimes it's a bit more cloudy. I kind of see what they were going for, but it didn't quite work, or it was too similar to earlier levels. There's also a difficult balancing act for the action levels. I want them to be challenging, but sometimes they got too challenging and it became easier to get through just by trial and error and memorization. I remember one of the last levels of the game in particular, which was a very interesting take on the core concept in theory. But in reality, I'm not sure if any human would get to that point in the game and actually be able to get through that without a large degree of memorization and trial and error. Maybe this was a case of wanting to fully explore the possibility space of the mechanics, in which case I think that's very admirable. But to me, the possibility space you should be exploring is not just what are all the theoretically interesting combinations of mechanics we can put on the screen. It's about the interesting dynamics you can create in the player's head, the mental gymnastics it takes to deal with these scenarios in the levels. So I think I would have enjoyed the game more if the more action-heavy levels were more consistently close to that sweet spot where remembering pieces can help, but I still really have to focus and think on the fly. Of course, it's impossible to always hit that balance because it's going to be different for each player, but that can be mitigated with good level sequencing, teaching concepts one piece at a time, building up to the craziest stuff. Fortunately, there is a difficulty option. If you hate the fast-paced action stuff, you can slow it down, or you can do the opposite. I honestly think the setting is perfect. I like that it's instantly understood, unlike most difficulty settings in games. All the other elements of the game also go a long way to ease the pain of the difficulty. The gameplay is framed by these cute comics. They're so dense with information, they get straight to the point, they inject some humor into the game. The drone pilot's animations also provide comic relief, Every detail of this guy's animations is funny and charming. This is literally my face when trying a hard level for the 100th time. The pleasant, upbeat music helps as well. It's not quite as wild and funky as the music Greg, aka Cosmo D, makes for his own games, but it's still great. It's got very catchy beats and unusual instrumentation choices that work really well, and the boss battles get much more tense just from the added drums and faster tempo. If you really want to lose your mind playing this game, I recommend the co-op mode, which I found to be exponentially harder. One person can only switch to up and down, and the other can only switch to left and right. I only tried it a little bit, but it created a very funny, although also a very frustrating dynamic. I also like that it has some replayability built in because of these metrics that you can try to optimize for each level. Most of all, it's pretty cool that no matter which way you choose to play, whether that's 60% speed, 100% speed, single player, co-op, it's worth playing. It doesn't change the core appeal of the game. This is such a fresh take on the split brain concept. Maybe it could have been a bit more consistent, but at its best, it gives me a feeling not quite like anything else I've ever played. No individual aspect of it is weak. I really like this one, and you should give it a try. And I'm giving Damaged in Transit a 7 out of 10. Thanks for watching, everyone. I did this one not quite as heavily scripted as usual, so let me know how it turned out compared to my other videos if you have a strong opinion about that. Let me know what you think of Damaged in Transit, and I'll see you guys next time.